evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 370. And tonight, now that Aragorn has taken command of the Company of the Ring in the really very admirable way we were discussing last time, it is time to do some tourism. We do have enough time before sunset for just a little bit of dwarven tourism, and we are here for it, I believe. So that is what we're going to be up to today. We're going to be looking at Tolkien's descriptions of the Dimrill Dale. One thing I want to flag before we do this is just remember that we've talked about this before, the question of landscape descriptions in The Lord of the Rings, right? Lots of people talk about that. There's so many landscape descriptions in The Lord of the Rings. He takes so long describing things. Here's a great example. We're about to look at the landscape in the Dimrill Dale, right? This is totally what is about to happen. Let's look at the patterns. Let's see what we see. What is it that Tolkien actually does? Coming to understand the landscape descriptions, the passages so-called, is, I think, a really fun thing. Of course, we've seen lots of descriptions so far. And one of the things that we have noticed is how much alliteration he tends to do in those. So I'm going to be, I'm going to be looking out for that also. But let's, we will see. First, we have a whole bunch of upcoming events that I wanted to draw to your attention here this evening. So, and I am delighted to tell you in advance, before I even call them up, that not a single one of them is sold out yet. So that's exciting. All right. So if you go to BlackBerry, blackberry.signumuniversity.org, our lovely registration center for events and space. Here is, if you scroll down to the events section, you will see how impressively long is this list of events that is coming up. In fact, almost all of our fall events have now been posted and open for registration. So almost every single moot remaining in calendar year 2026 is now available. 2026 might set a record, I think, for total number of events. We have a ton of events this year. So for the fall, and fall begins, of course, because we're an academic institution, so fall begins in August. We have Helcaraxa Moot in Fairbanks, Alaska. That's August 1st. Okay, I'm sorry, all the way up there. Then we have Cascade Moot, which is going to be in Portland, Oregon this year. And that one, of course, is at the end of August. So we've got 2 August moots there coming up, followed by Ranger Moot in September. This is going to be back in the Cincinnati area, September 11th through the 13th. This is our really fun outdoor moot that we are going to be having for the 3rd year in a row at the Boy Scout camp there in Loveland, Ohio. Really, really fun time. Been a wonderful moot ever since we began that one. So that's going to be September 11th through the 13th. Then we have Euromoot. We've had this one announced for a little while, October 2nd through 4th in Prague. Going to be really awesome. Our 3-day moot over there in Europe. Then New England Moot. This is newly opened. New England Moot on October 24th. And by the way, we're skipping over one here. This is the one that we don't have yet. We should have soon. Middle Moot out in Kansas City again this year. And that'll be, I think, the week before October 17th. But October 24th, back in Derry, New Hampshire, back to Studio Lab for New England Moot at the end of October. And then Carolina Moot. We're going back to North Carolina again, this time in Charlotte. It'll be fun to get back to Charlotte again. November 7th in Charlotte for Carolina Moot. And then we will be ending the year boldly, bravely, with Motown Moot on December 12th in Plymouth, Michigan, near Detroit. This is going to be our first ever Michigan Moot. So that's going to be, that'll be cool. That'll be fun. So these are all of the events that are coming up in the latter part of this year. Of course, we still have 3 spring moots left as well. We have to count backwards on those. Willow Moot on May 23rd in Leuven, Belgium. We have in the beginning of May, we have Mountain Moot, May 9th in Denver, Colorado. And then, of course, we have Tex Moot this very weekend, in just a few days, I'll be flying down to Houston to hang out with all the cool people down in Houston, Texas for Tex Moot on this Saturday, April 11th. So, and of course, in the center, in the very middle, at the heart of our Moot year is Myth Moot, of course. June 25th through the 28th at the National Conference Center in Leesburg, Virginia. This is not just a moot like any other. Myth Moot is the annual retreat for fantasy fans and Tolkien fans, Signum University people. It is such a wonderful time to be able to get together. It is really like retreating from the world into into this really fun alternate world in the in the concrete basement of the National Conference Center. And it is such a delightful escape every year. I look forward to it so much. That is Myth Moot. Oh, hey, awesome, Miss Ray, you're coming to Myth Moot this year? That's fantastic. That's gonna be awesome. I know I enjoyed meeting you at Ranger Moot last year, Rachel, and it'll be great having you at Myth Moot this year. So, and Silk Westcott, you're coming too. Fantastic. Jackie, you're coming to Myth Moot. Oh, Myth Moot is going to be so awesome this year. So excited. Myth Moot is just the heart. We have many events, and all of our events are really fun. Myth Moot is really the heart of our Moot year. Anyway, so those are all of the things that are coming up. As I say, we have almost all of them open for registration now. So I hope that you can stop in and join us and spend one of our days as I'm traveling around the world to get the privilege of hanging out with such awesome people. I did want to draw attention to one other thing, which is also quite proximate, and that is the Space Showcase. This is an online event, so everyone can attend on April 18th. So that's not this Saturday, but next Saturday. We're going to have a day where we're going to be getting a preview of upcoming space classes. Our Space Showcase, for those of you who have never attended it, this is not just like announcements or discussion. These are actual classes. So there are these half-hour mini classes. We call them space capsules. That are being taught by really wonderful teachers. Dr. Sarah Brown, the great Tolkien scholar, Dr. Sarah Brown, is going to be teaching a little mini class on the tale of Beren and Luthien starting at 10 a.m. These times are all Eastern time in America. Adam Beaton, our regional Moot coordinator, is going to be teaching a little capsule on his study of the Romans and the persecution of the Christians. So we've got some Tolkien stuff. We've got some history stuff. Anyway, you'll be able to look through and see all of the things. If you want to attend, just show up to the showcase. You've got a couple different options. I encourage you to register for the showcase. And that way you can attend. It's going to be hosted on Zoom, so you'll be able to attend the Zoom session and, have your comments seen and stuff and sort of participate that way. If you want to be one of the students who actually participates live in the discussion for any of these classes, that's what this enroll for free button is for. You can enroll as a student in any one of those. Then after our capsules, so we're doing the 5 different little mini space classes, and these are all free. These are all available for the public. And then at the end, Rob Gosselin, the director of space, and I are going to be talking a little bit about space stuff and what's coming up in space here in sort of looking ahead over the next 6 months. And then at 1 p.m. I'm going to be doing a little bit of an update. I talked in November about launching our growth campaign, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and how things are going and what our plans are. So you can tune in for that at 1 p.m. And so that's it'll be a really fun day on April 18th. And there may be more coming after. We're still thinking about maybe doing some other things later in the afternoon too. So I encourage you, especially if you are curious about our space classes and what they're like and what's going on, I would encourage you to check it out on the 18th. I'm also going to be streaming it. So it's going to be hosted on Zoom. If you want to participate directly, you should register or register in that and potentially enroll in the individual capsules. But if you're just going to watch, you can also tune in and watch in all the places you are tuning in and watching this right now, because those will be available also. All right. That's what's happening. Lots going on around the Signum world. Now, let's get back to the Dimrill Dale. Okay. Ready? Now, are your ears tuned? You're ready to pay attention to the shape of this description and what it is that Tolkien dwells on? we're going to be thinking about this here. Here we go. So we discussed the first two paragraphs. Let's start with paragraph 3 of last week's slide, and then I'm going to continue right forward. So we're like doing a whole slide and a half from the beginning here today. They rose and looked about them. Northward the dale ran up into a glen of shadows between two great arms of the mountains, above which 3 white peaks were shining: Celebdil, Fanuathal, Carathras, the mountains of Moria. At the head of the glen, a torrent flowed like a white lace over an endless ladder of short falls, and a mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. "Yonder is the Dimrill Stair," said Aragorn, pointing to the falls. "Down the deep cloven way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come, if fortune had been kinder." "Or Carathras less cruel," said Gimli. "There he stands, smiling in the sun." He shook his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks and turned away. Gimli disses Carathras. To the east, the outflung arm of the mountains marched to a sudden end, and far lands could be descried beyond them, wide and vague. To the south, the misty mountains receded endlessly, as far as sight could reach. Less than a mile away, and a little below them, for they still stood high up on the western side of the dale, there lay a mere. It was long and oval, shaped like a great spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen, but its southern end was beyond the shadows under the sunlit sky. Yet its waters were dark, a deep blue like clear evening sky seen from a lamplit room. Its face was still and unruffled. About it lay a smooth sward, shelving down on all sides to its bare, unbroken rim. "There lies the Miramir, deep Heled Zaram," said Gimli sadly. "I remember that he said, 'May you have joy of the sight,' but we cannot linger there. Now long shall I journey ere I have joy again. It is I that must hasten away, and he that must remain." All right. Stuff did you notice? Good. Maureen is pointing out the persistent personification of the mountains. Yes. Now, things like the arms of the mountains or the head of the mountains, it's not like those are peculiar anthropomorphisms, right? I mean, like those are things that are often said about mountains, but you're right. Those are the way that they are kind of brought together. It's pretty persistent. And as Jackie is pointing out, the use of the verb marched as well. He's giving them, motion, people-like motion, right? Yeah, Bricktail says, "The mountains so far have arms, feet, knees, a head, and they yawn." Yeah, that does seem to start adding up to something, doesn't it, Bricktails? Yes, I agree. AD Pirtle, I agree. We're still a little bit shy of actually describing them as stone giants. But yeah, it's kind of what it's making me think of also. Trifle points out that we have more body parts of the mountains than we have of Balrogs, in fact. Totally true. Yeah, absolutely. Though it is true, as who was pointing out that we don't get nostrils. I missed it. Somebody. Oh yes, Bob the 3/4 wing was pointing out that for all of their body parts, the mountains don't appear to have nostrils. Okay. So yes, the personification of the mountains is pronounced. And therefore, and I'm thinking, Jackie, of what you were pointing out about the verb. They're like the mountains marching, right? The use of active verbs is also important. I mean, yeah, okay. I am interested in the similes that he was using, especially in that second description after Aragorn and Gimli sort of interject, right? We get the metaphors, like the personifications, those are metaphors, right? When he says, to the east, the outflung arm of the mountains march to a sudden end. The arm is a metaphor, right? He's comparing it to an arm sticking out, but it's not actually an arm, right? So that's a metaphor. But then we get a couple similes as we move down that paragraph. It was long and oval. This is the mirror, right? The mirror he's describing. It was long and oval, shaped like a great spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen. So there's our simile. How is it shaped? It's shaped like a great spearhead thrust into the northern glen. By the way, do you see the difference there between how Tolkien uses metaphors in his descriptions and how he's using similes? In general, right? A metaphor he's using, a lot of this is kind of like how the difference between metaphors and similes, right? But a metaphor is often a single word like that. The word arm is I guess outflung is also involved, right, in that. But, it's just one very short idea, a little short connection. It's asking you to picture. But it's not asking you to think about it. Metaphors can go by really quick without you even realizing that they happened, right? You kind of have to force yourself to stop and think about the metaphors. Like you can read that sentence, to the east, the outflung arm of the mountains march to a sudden end, and just be like, okay, right. Yeah. I'm picturing this bit of mountains that stick out right to the south and, from to the south of them. And, so yeah, but you actually have to stop to even notice that there was a metaphor there, right? But when he does a simile, he's making you think. He's making you think. Sometimes he's making you picture something specific, like this first metaphor is making you picture something specific. He wants to really inform your imagination here. It was long and oval. Okay, how long and how oval exactly are we talking here? He's like, well, wait. Okay, shaped like a great spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen. Okay, so on the one hand, he is giving us clear visual cues. Okay, it's spearhead shaped. So oval, but spearhead shaped. So it's pointed on the one side. And the pointy bit is thrust into the northern glen. So there's a bunch of trees on the northern side of the valley, and the trees come down and surround the top skinny part of the lake, right? That's literally what he's describing. But notice how he's making it really violent as well, right? So on the one hand, he is helping us to picture precisely what the mirror looks like and how it sits in the valley. But he's also creating this other association, like a spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen. Oh, okay. Think how you could choose totally different imagery to describe that same thing. Again, if what we're talking about is a tapering northern end of the lake, and the northern part is surrounded by trees. I mean, you could be like, the forest came down and embraced the, northern tip of the lake, and it would describe the same thing, right? But instead he describes the mirror itself, the lake, as a weapon that is stabbing into the forest, which has a totally different effect. Ro and I agree. I think in general, what he's describing is that the lake is like an elongated teardrop shape. Yeah, I think that's clearly what he's describing. But yes, Bricktails, apt though a teardrop might be, for the company who are still doubtless wiping tears and snot off their face even now, they are like he doesn't make that comparison at all, right? In fact, it's quite the opposite. Yes, Eric, it does give the vague impression that the Glen was there first. Like, here was this forest, right? Minding its own business, or maybe not. Maybe it was being a jerk. Who knows? But then the mirror came and stabbed into it, right? Yes. Is this some kind of, reflection or projection of like, the relationship of the dwarves and the land around them, and yet they shall have need of wood. I don't know. But it kind of feels that way a little bit, right? But that's not even what I mean when I say that his similes make you think. That's not even what I mean. Though, again, the comparison to the spearhead does, in fact, accomplish more than simply shaping informing our mental picture of what we're imagining here. But the next sentence, this is an even more like Tolkien flavored simile. Yet its waters were dark, a deep blue like clear evening sky seen from a lamplit room. Okay, wait. So if it's evening and you're in a lamplit room, and you're looking out the window at the evening sky, that's what it looks like. I assume. So I'm trying to picture, because see, this is a simile what is this simile about? This simile is describing the deep blue, right? It is telling us the exact quality of the blueness of the Mirror. But in order even to picture this, we've got to think about it. We've got to now, hang on, set the Dimrill Dale aside for a second. Now I'm picturing, okay, I'm in like a cottage, and it's lit by a lamp, not by electric lights, mind, just a lamp. And it's evening outside, but probably not totally dark yet. It's probably in that time of night when, like when you're a kid and your mom, who's inside the lit house, says, hey, it's dark, you need to come in. But you, the kid, are outside, and you're like, but it's not dark yet. It only looks dark to you because you're inside, right? Probably about that time of night. I think everybody can kind of remember that kind of night. Because it's gotta be, you can see the sky, like the clear evening sky seen from a lamplit room. So if it's too dark, you can't see the sky at all. It's just black out the window. And that's clearly not what he's describing. He's comparing it to the color specifically of the sky. So, and there are this in the gloaming, right? As the gloaming is happening, the sun is down, but it's not dark yet. But it looks darker from inside when there's a light, but the light inside isn't all that bright because it's just a lamp. So, and you can still see the difference between, the sort of darker, trees or ground, whatever outside, and the lighter sky, but it's very dark blue heading towards black, right? Um, that's the blue. But I myself, I have to like, again, I have to literally pause, stop thinking entirely about the Dimrill Dale, and picture this situation. And when I do, I'm like, okay, all right, I can get behind that. This is like, I'm sure you all remember my very favorite simile in The Lord of the Rings, right? We talked about it years ago. The Goldberry simile, or rather the simile to describe Frodo's feelings, his reaction when Goldberry opened the door of Tom Bombadil's house. That protracted simile about knocking at the door of a shepherd's cot to beg for a cup of water, to be unexpectedly met by a fair young elf queen clad in living flowers. That one, right? And that's another example where it's like, okay, time out. Right. I was trying to picture Goldberry answering the door, but wait, now there's this whole other story like that. I love that simile because it contains, it's like, that simile is like a short story, right? All by itself. And so I've got to sit down and let that short story unfold in my head. And then I can be like, all right, once I've kind of processed the story, the narrative in that, then I can bring it back. I'm like, okay, now, so that's what Frodo felt like, I guess. But it's a whole different imaginative journey. This is a lower key version of that, right? This simile is not nearly as ornate and complicated as that one. But it's a couple steps in that direction, right? Yet its waters were dark, a deep blue like queer evening sky seen from a lamplit room. Its face was still and unruffled. Notice the mirror has a face, too. About it lay a smooth sward, shelving down on all sides. Adam, you were talking about the alliteration there. That, I think, it's even more fun than mere alliteration. I love the variation there. Smooth sward shelving. Say those words slowly and watch what your mouth does. Smooth sward shelving. You've got that sibilant sound at the beginning, but the sound moves straight back down your mouth. The M that you're making with your lips, the W that you're making in the front middle of your mouth, and then the sh that you're making further back in your mouth, right? You can feel it like that. And what's he describing? He's describing a smooth lawn shelving down on all sides. And he makes the sounds recede in a shelving way back in your mouth. Like, it's so cool. It is so cool. He's actually emulating that sense of like descent towards the lake with your own like tongue in your mouth. It's just like, that is so next level right there. That is so next level. And then, yes, Jackie, I agree. Bare, unbroken rim. That reminds me of the, what was it? In the Chamber of Mizarble. What was the phrase? Hang on, it'll come to me. The slab phrase. The block. Yes. Single oblong block. That was it. Single oblong block. And we were looking at the way that he's taking those consonants and like ringing the changes on how you put them together in your mouth. Single oblong block. That was it. Single oblong block. Bare, unbroken rim is similar to that. Do you see that? You've got the bare, B and R, with a vowel in between, and then unbroken. So you've got now the B and R are right up against each other. And then you get just the R on the other side. Bare unbroken rim. And yes, the way that the B and the R together and unbroken are flanked by the N's right there. And then with another nasal with the M at the very end. Yep. Bare unbroken rim. Yes. And these are the kinds of things. Okay. It's way beyond. Like, it doesn't do justice to the shaping of Tolkien's prose to merely talk about alliteration as if the simple repetition of a consonantal sound, especially the mere repetition of an initial consonant, as if that were the whole story, as if that were the extent of the artistry. It's much more than that. Oh, yes, Jackie, you're right. After bare unbroken rim and then right into mirror, mirror in the next line. Yes. Absolutely. Many of you were noticing that he is doing, he does a lot of like the alliterative pairing. Things like down the deep cloven way. Down the deep cloven way that climbs beside the torrent. Down deep cloven climbs. So the DDCC there. Journey, joy, mirror, mirror, misty mountains. Those count. Mountains of Moria. I'm looking back to the previous paragraph as well. And remember that in the past, when we've noticed that, what that has tended to signal, whenever I catch those kinds of pairings, like prominent and proximate alliteration, things that kind of jump out at you and catch your attention, that's what I take it to be doing. That is catching my attention, right? And then once our attention is caught, we notice other things, right? Like I noticed down the deep, that got my attention. But as soon as I noticed down the deep, I couldn't help but notice cloven way that climbs. And then as soon as I noticed that, I'm like, oh wait, cloven way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come if fortune had been kinder, or Carathras less cruel, right? Look how the D's through deep cloven then lead us into the K sounds that then we keep getting, and which kind of, it's almost like the end of Aragorn's line is a setup for Gimli's conclusion, or Carathras less cruel, right? Yeah, really fun. Sorry, I'm just sounding out other things in my head here. Yeah. Anyway, I agree about joy and journey there at the end. Yes, and to Juiceman, I agree. The mirror is almost too perfect. The water is blue like the evening sky. The grass on the bank is smooth. The rim even is unbroken. The narrator goes far out of his way to portray the perfectness of the scene. After the shock of Gandalf's fall, to see an almost unnaturally picturesque view would perhaps make the grief sting even more acutely. Yes, there is something a little bit weird about the mirror. Notice he only uses one word to draw our attention to it. Yet. That is, there is something actually genuinely weird in the sense of being preternatural about the mirror. We haven't yet had the full reveal. That will only come from Sam when they get closer to it, which we may get to next week. But it's only an hour afternoon, remember. And maybe 2 hours now. They were crying for a little while. But still, it's early in the afternoon. The sun is still up. It's not nighttime. It is not yet evening sky. And yet the mirror, which should, in theory, be reflecting the sky, doesn't look like the afternoon sky. It looks like the evening sky. And again, the only way that he draws attention to this as some kind of anomaly is very gently with that one word, yet. But its southern end was beyond the shadows under the sunlit sky. Sunlit sky, he emphasizes. Yet, its waters were dark. So he draws attention that although the sky is sunlit, yet nevertheless, the waters looked dark. And that's when he gives us the evening sky metaphor. Our attention is being drawn to the fact, and Two Jewish Men, I agree with you, the almost weirdly picturesque, element of the landscape here, of the mirror and its surroundings, is already, again, as you say, almost too perfect. And it's strange. It is peculiar. Another thing I want to draw attention to, not just the prose and the sound of the prose, or not just his similes and metaphors. Look at the point of view. This is one of the things that I think is most important, and that people who are impatient with the landscape descriptions most miss. Again, you'll hear people complain about Tolkien's descriptions, as if what Tolkien is doing is simply describing things. He's not simply describing things. Look at how he frames this. Where do we begin? They rose and looked about them. Northward the dale ran up into a glen of shadows. So, all of this description has a frame. And the frame is the company, generally, probably the hobbits especially, looking at these things. Why is he lingering here? Why do we get 2 long paragraphs of description? And by the way, they're not that long, right? We get this paragraph, the 3rd paragraph on this slide, and the middle paragraph on this slide. That's not a huge amount. It's 2 whole paragraphs, but it's not like it goes on for 3 pages. But why are we getting it at all? Because they are pausing to look. And we're being told what they see upon pausing to look. So we are being invited, this is not just Tolkien describing the landscape. This is Tolkien inviting us to share in the experience of the Company of the Ring. And the Company of the Ring contains 4 hobbits, none of whom have ever seen the eastern side of the Misty Mountains at all. And here they are, now for the first time, really looking about them. At first, they were just like, sunlight! OMG! Right? That was the first reaction that we saw as they were in their final sprint towards the gates. Then they were overcome by grief, and they were barely even aware of their surroundings. They're barely aware of the stairs they were running down. And then they collapsed. So now, for the first time, they're actually looking about them. And when they do, they're like, whoa. We are in a totally new place we've never seen. But wait, this isn't just a part of Middle-earth we've never seen. This is not just the eastern side of the Misty Mountains. This is Azanulbizar. This is Dimrill Dale. We've heard legends about this place. It's hard to make a comparison. I guess, I don't know. It's not just finding yourself in a new place, but suddenly looking around and being like, whoa, this is like, actually this place that I'm looking at is like Gettysburg or, Boswell Plain or, some other, like a site of a legendary battle that you've heard about your whole life. And yeah, so it's a big deal, and they stop to take it in. And so we are given it because we are having the same experience that they have. And notice how, having given us that frame, they rose and looked about them. Once we take that frame, once we take that cue, we can even see, like, so what do? First, they turn their heads to the left. Northward, the dale ran up into a glen of shadows. Like, we can follow their, those website testing those where they use the webcam to be able to track where your eyes go. You know how like they're those, it's really creepy for those of you who don't know about it, forget I said it. But anyway, like the way that he frames this enables us almost to do the same, like to imagine our eyes following the path of the eyes of the hobbits, right? North, so they're looking out of the valley. They turn to the left, and their eyes follow the valley, the dale, up into a glen of shadows. So then we see the shadowy wood up in the north, between two great arms of the mountain. So now they're continuing to look up, right? The two great arms of the mountain surrounding the glen up in the north. And then their eyes keep tracing up and to the three white peaks. And they know the names because Gimli told them the names in three languages and has presumably been quizzing them since then. So they're like, oh, yeah. I know this. Celebdil, Fanuathal, Caradhras. The mountains of Moria. Now their eyes trail back down at the head of the glen. So back down to the northernmost part of the valley. A torrent flowed like a white lace over an endless ladder of short falls. There's the river that descends into the valley, and a mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. One set of feet. Yes, Bob says the F's and L's. Yes. At the head of the glen, a torrent flowed like a white lace over an endless ladder of short falls, and a mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. Absolutely. Hear all those L's? Glen flowed like a lace, endless ladder of short falls. But he started putting the F's in with flowed and falls, and then the F's take over. Foam, feet, right? And do you hear the effect of that? The liquid L's becoming the fricative F. It's the sound of a waterfall, right? The liquid river flowing down until it foams in the falls at the feet of the mountain, right? L into F. So cool. So cool. Anyway, so and then, right? They're all looking up that way, right? Then Aragorn comments on it. That's the Dimrill Dale. If Caradhras hadn't been a jerk, we would have been coming that way. We'll come back to what they actually say in a little bit. I want to focus on the description first. Now, what are we doing? To the east, the outflung arm of the mountains marched to a sudden end. Okay, so now we've looked up on the left-hand side. And now they're looking to the right. There's an outflung arm of mountains that heads to the east that is south of them. So, okay, so there's a bunch of mountains down to our right that come out to a sudden end. Beyond them, to the south, to our far right, the misty mountains receded endlessly as far as sight could reach, just like they looked up at the peaks there. Now they're looking down at the receding line of the misty mountains continuing to the south. And then, finally, they turned back to the center, less than a mile away and a little below them. Not far below them, but a little below them, for they still stood high up on the west side of the dale. There lay a mere. Now the mirror is the last thing described. As they've looked to the left, they've looked to the right, and now they're looking in front of them. And so we're getting the whole experience, and he is helping. So why did they not look at the mirror first? They didn't look at the mirror first because first they're just trying to see, like, where are we? What's happening here? This is, like, where in the world are we? Remember also, they've been underground for 3 days. Remember when Bilbo came out of the goblin tunnels in The Hobbit? After his little side quest with Gollum? And he didn't even realize that he was on the other side of the mountains until the sun started to set and he realized the sun was setting behind the mountains, right? It's really easy to lose track of time when you're underground. Like a whole year can pass since you discussed the Chamber of Mizarble and you didn't even notice it. But anyway, yeah, so they're trying to orient themselves. Where are we? What are we seeing? What's happening right now? And they're looking far to the right and left to understand the things. But then they're struck, finally, by what's straight in front of them. And that is the thing that then absorbs their attention. And this is why I think he doesn't do similes until we get to the mirror. We get a bunch of metaphors. Okay, we get the one simile, like a white lace over an endless ladder of shortfalls. Flowed like a white lace. But that's a fairly short and simple simile. Once again, it gives more specific instructions to our visual imagination, right? The white lace over an endless ladder, like a white lace over an endless ladder of shortfalls. So he's making sure that we are picturing the whiteness of the water as it's falling. But apart from that, it's mostly metaphors. But when we get to the mirror, when the description comes to the mirror, when they stop looking around them into the distance and they look at what's immediately before them in the valley, now we pause. Now we get the similes. Let's think about the shape of the mirror. Let's think about the color of the mirror, right? So, and once again, if we remember the frame, this captures not just the picture, not just what they're seeing in front of them. This captures their experience as well. And it prompts us to have a similar experience. Those similes, as we discussed before, make you stop and think, make you even pause. If you're being really attentive, it might even make you, like, put the book down for a second and think about it. Because that's what they're doing, not putting the book down, but they're stopping. They are arrested by the sight of the mirror. And he makes the sight of it arresting to us, not by telling us that it is arresting, not by alluding to their feelings at all. He's not. He hasn't told us anything at all about how they're feeling. All he did was say they rose and looked about them, to prompt us, to just provide us in the simplest possible way to provide us with that frame, that this is the company looking at these things. But having given us that frame, he then enables us to re-experience the emotional experience of perceiving these things. And his description is organized and paced so as to make that possible for us to do that, for us to have to kind of recreate that experience. Oh yes, Auru, we do get more direct stuff from the company in the dialogue lines that interrupt. I'm speaking of those two paragraphs, those two description paragraphs themselves. Like at what I mean is, at no point in his description does he interrupt his description with something like, like telling us how they felt when they looked at the mirror. He doesn't do that. He just tells us that they're looking, and then he makes us experience things. Yeah, Jackie, exactly. No inner dialogue stuff do we get. Exactly. And so is he painting this picture? Yes, he totally is. Do we have here Tolkien pausing for a moment to picture this like as if he were going to paint it himself? Yes. Do we in fact have some paintings of Tolkien's of scenes that he describes in this kind of way from his books? Yes, we do. Not this one, unfortunately, but there are times. So yes, I do think that the painter in him is coming out in part, but it's not just that. He makes it dynamically a part of the narrative, part of the emotional experience, part of the connection that we have with Frodo and the hobbits, that we know even on a subconscious level. We know that this description, both of those two paragraphs of description, although he doesn't say this explicitly, there is great emotional weight to these. And I think it's amazing how he accomplishes that. But now let's go to the parts that we've skipped in order to focus on the description, because that's the other way in which he does give us cues. The first one, as I said, is that first sentence. They rose and looked about them. But although they, that is the viewers, never return within those two paragraphs, and we're never told within those exactly how they're feeling, they are interrupted. They're framed, like the frame continues through the interruptions. And the interruptions are all about the feelings. Aragorn points to the river descending. Yonder is the Dimrill stair. Down the deep cloven way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come, if fortune had been kinder. Pointing to this alternative version. Remember, we tried to go over Carathras. And remember, that was his idea, Aragorn's idea. Remember his, you followed my lead, almost a disaster in the snow, to Gandalf, before they went in. Aragorn did not want to go to Moria at all. So here's Aragorn pointing out, had my plan worked, we would have come down right there. So yeah, we were already up Carathras. We'd have been coming down those stairs, all 9 of us, a couple days ago. If fortune had been kinder. And there's definitely a wistfulness there. Because remember, again, it's not just what if, That was the like argument. But, oh, you're right. 10. Bill would have been with them. You're right. You're right. It is a really fascinating question, isn't it? Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory. If Carothras had been less cruel, what would have happened to Bill? I think he'd have had to stay in Lothlorien, as he certainly couldn't have gotten on the boat. But could you imagine that? Bill the pony lives in Lothlorien thereafter? He would have been talking. If they'd ever seen him again. Yes, Trifle is thinking exactly the same thing. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's true. Well, no. Yeah, it's true that he wouldn't have been able to get up in the flet. But I don't think that means that orcs would have caught him, because the orcs were only chasing him because they came through Moria. Presumably, if they'd come down the Dimrill Stair, there's no necessary reason to believe the orcs would have been after them there. But anyway, whatever. Yummy pony meat. Ballinor, what do you think this is? The Hobbit? No way. No ponies are eaten in this book. Thank you very much. The pony mortality rate was way high enough in the Hobbit. I still think that Tolkien is like, making it up to all of the horses. There is only one certified equine death in the entirety of the Lord of the Rings. Rowan, that's exactly it. Snowmane, Theoden's horse. Only horse harmed in the entire story. Yes. And he gets a mound, right? We do a whole funeral instead of the nameless ponies getting eaten by goblins and dragons. And yes. Anyway, sorry. A little side trip there. But side trip is exactly what we're contemplating. So Aragorn is wistfully thinking of what could have been. And I do think if fortune had been kinder is a really interesting turn of phrase on his part. If fortune had been kinder? So what, you think that, Aragorn, are you suggesting you've been done wrong by fortune? That destiny is against you? Right, Ballinor sort of translates, if Providence had been more amenable. Yeah. Exactly. And I don't think that's how that works. Right? Gandalf trusted to Providence. We saw that in the Council of Elrond. And I think that this is a big reason why Gandalf was so convinced they needed to go through Moria. And a big reason why he went through Moria despite the fact that Aragorn prophesied that he would likely be in trouble if they went through Moria. I don't think that Aragorn is here actually railing against fate here. Against fortune. But it's an interesting moment in that way, because his words invite that kind of thinking. He is implicitly calling fortune unkind. This is Aragorn, I think, wrestling with the fact Providence took Gandalf away from us. We could have just made it over Carothras, but it snowed. Like, because of the weather, we couldn't. And, fortune could have been laid differently. We could have just made it over the mountain, come down that path a day or two ago, and Gandalf is still with us, and we still have Bill the Pony, and everything's fine. But it didn't. Fortune was in that sense unkind to them. It prevented them coming the easier way. Easier, certainly, in retrospect. In forespect by Aragorn also. And it prevented that and took Gandalf away from them. It's as if Providence wanted Gandalf dead. As if this is how things were supposed to be. And of course, we will later on have reason to believe that that's exactly the case. That Providence has arranged this, not because it's being unkind, but because it has an unexpected and greater kindness in store for them later on. It could have been different, but it couldn't have been better, Adam. I agree. But again, I think in this moment in which he's just done the informal and very brief funeral for Gandalf, Aragorn is, if not questioning, he's processing. He's certainly inviting questions of fortune, of Providence here. At the very least, where he's standing right now, he doesn't understand. I think it does amount to a question in the sense of, God, dude, why? Why couldn't you just hold off the snow one day and let us... Why? I don't get it. He doesn't get it. He might later, but from where he's standing now, he doesn't get it. Gimli, of course, points out that there is more at work than just the quirks of fate here. I think what is implied in Aragorn's use, one of the things implied in Aragorn's use of the word fortune, is that it seems like a random chance. Just the weather. A freak turn in the weather in the mountain passes and boom. Snow in the high mountains in January? Who could have foreseen it? Right? But still, that seems to be what is implied in his reference to fortune being kinder. Gimli points out, hey, no. It's not just, that was not a freak thunderstorm. That wasn't bad luck. That was, it's like, I don't know, you're trying to balance on something and a gust of wind suddenly comes up while you're trying to balance and you lose your balance because of the gust of wind. It's like, oh, well, that was an unkind fortune that I was knocked off that beam just then, right? And Gimli's like, no. Not if somebody pushes you. If somebody pushes you, it's not just a freak happenstance that you were pushed by a jerk, right? Right, we didn't fall, we were pushed. Exactly right. Caradhras with malice aforethought, as Emily says. There he stands, smiling in the sun, says Gimli, thoroughly personifying Caradhras. As if he can make out an expression. It's not like the mountain doesn't just have a face. It has an expression, right? A smug, malicious smile that you just want to punch off it. And he shakes his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks, and then my favorite part, and turned away. Gimli offers Caradhras the cut direct, as they would have said in the 18th century. Exactly, Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory. It's smirking up there, Caradhras is. Um, yes. So again, we're given a lot about. We interrupt this description, like right in the middle of our 2 paragraphs of description. We get half tour guide offering context of what they're seeing from Aragorn. Oh, look, that's the Dimrill Stair. We would have come right down that. But also an emotionally charged commentary, which connects directly to their grief and is still an expression of his own grief. We would not have lost Gandalf if fortune had been kinder or Carothros less cruel. Gimli's grief turned to anger. Gimli does not forgive Carothros. Gimli is going away carrying a grudge against that mountain. And so, yes, Jackie, I agree. You can see both of the 2 of them processing their grief in different ways. Then we get our second description. And then Gimli interrupts again. There lies the Mirror, deep Khaled Zaram, said Gimli sadly. Remember excited Gimli, running ahead of the company? Remember Gimli's best day as they were going up the Saranan, the dry bed of the Saranan, finding the west gate of Moria, approaching the mountains that he had seen in his dreams. And now he is looking down at Khaled Zaram itself, the Mirror, one of the most sacred sites, certainly for the Longbeards, in the entire world. If you just had his sentence, there lies the mirror, deep Khaled Zaram, exclamation point, you can imagine how he would have said that, what the conversational tag might have been like 3 days ago, right? Had he been in the same frame of reference that he was 3 days ago. But now he says it sadly. We get an adverb for how he says it, because there's a contrast between what he's saying, how he expected to say it, how we expected he would have been saying it, and how in fact he is saying it now. And then immediately, what does seeing Khaled Zaram, this fulfillment of a lifelong dream of his, literally, what does it do? What does it make him think? It makes him think of Gandalf immediately. He quotes him. I remember that he said, may you have joy of the sight, but we cannot linger there. Notice how he even remembers remember even that he remembers Gandalf saying something cranky. I remember Gandalf telling me that I'd better not plan on taking a long side trip to Khaled Zaram because we're not going to have time. Right? That's basically what Gandalf was saying. I hope you enjoy seeing it briefly, my dwarven friend, because we're not going to be able to linger there. And he's like, I remember when Gandalf told me I'd have to move along real fast. And he turns it. Now long shall I journey ere I have joy again. Gandalf anticipated that hoped that he would have joy, but warned him that that joy would have to be brief. He'd best prepare himself for brevity of joy. And Gimli says, now it's reversed. Everything is backwards now. Now long shall I journey ere I have joy again. It is I that must hasten away, and he that must remain. He had psychologically prepared himself for wanting to stay by the Mirror and Gandalf dragging him away by the beard, right? This is what he expected to happen. The "but we cannot linger there" was not only a cranky statement, but it was the harbinger of even greater crankiness to come. That in Gimli's anticipation, right? He was totally expecting Gandalf was going to have to drag him off. It's almost like he was planning on making Gandalf drag him away. No, I don't think, Girded Crayon, I don't think that Gimli was expecting to die in Moria. I think that what he is referring back to Gandalf's quotation, in which both Gandalf and Gimli were anticipating Gimli would want to stay behind and Gandalf would be dragging him away. And he's pointing to the ironic reversal. Instead, I'm the one hastening away and he's the one lingering. And that's just wrong. It is an expression of respect for Gandalf that Gimli is making here. The fact that he begins with the tourism statement. There lies the Mirror, deep Khaled Zaram, right? I mean, that could almost be on like the tourist, sign, overlook sign, right? The signage for this particular. There lies the Mirror, deep Khaled Zaram. He begins with the tourism expression. But again, with the contrast, the unexpected note of it being sadly instead of excitedly, or in awe, or whatever that he's saying it. That is, he is acknowledging, he is recognizing, he doesn't think any less of Khaled Zaram. This isn't any less of a big deal to him. But the entire thing, it is his expression of respect for Gandalf, that to him now, the whole thing is qualified by, is overwhelmed even still, by his emotional reaction to Gandalf's death. Now long shall I journey ere I have joy again, even in Khaled Zaram. Even in seeing this place. And remember, it's not just any ancient battlefield that Gimli is looking down on, right? His father fought here. This is a very significant family location for him. Yeah, Dark Satanic Biscuit Factory, I think it's perfectly fair to say that in a sense it now means even more. It is I that must hasten away and he that must remain. It is also as if he is saying, now every time I think of the beauty of Khaled Zaram and the one time that I have seen it with my waking eyes, I will always remember Gandalf. It will always remind me of Gandalf. Yes. And again, he's not even mentioning the battle. Some of that's a retcon situation. That is to say, I don't think that when Tolkien wrote this, he had all of the details of the Battle of Azanulbizar really worked out. He knew generally that, the dwarves fought the goblins and, Azog was killed and Bolg and all that stuff is in The Hobbit, right? But he hadn't really worked out that whole story. Um, the story that we get, of course, we get in Appendix A, written well after the whole book had been written. Even the whole like full retcon of the Oakenshield story and everything, that's all later. He hasn't invented most of that stuff yet. So I do think that it is true that when Tolkien is doing these landscape descriptions, he is not thinking of the Battle of Azanulbizar because he hasn't really written that yet. And yet, this is clearly very significant. Even if you don't have the details of the Battle of Azanulbizar in mind, there is still Durin Stone, which is now doubly significant. Doubly significant because of Balin, I mean. Remember that Balin was killed there. Balin came to look at... Gimli now knows that not only that Balin is dead, for certain, but that he died there. That he died coming out of Moria to look into the Mirror. And when he did, he was ambushed and killed. There. So we know at the very least he has, when Tolkien wrote this, Gimli would have had that association. And yes, Owen and Ori are dead too, though they didn't die right there. But yeah. So anyway, I don't think it's wrong for us to do some of that retcon that Tolkien invites us to do, to imagine Gimli thinking about the great battle that his father and uncles and almost everybody in his family was involved in this spot, even though Tolkien does not himself, like, again, is probably not himself actually thinking about that because he hadn't written it yet. But still. Yeah. Hey, let's peek ahead. 3 slides tonight, right? But I wanted to see the description hereafter. We'll come back to this slide next time. We're not going to finish this slide today. But I wanted to look at the shape, because notice how we have the paragraph of description, starting with the frame, the first paragraph of description, then the interruption with Caradhras being fortune in Caradhras, and then the other paragraph of description, and then Gimli's interruption about the Mirror and reflection on Gandalf, and then another paragraph of description. Sort of. The company now went down the road from the gates. It was rough and broken, fading to a winding track between heather and whin that thrust amid the cracking stones. But still it could be seen that once long ago a great paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands to the dwarf kingdom. In places there were ruined works of stone beside the path, and mounds of green topped with slender birches or fir trees sighing in the wind. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward of Mirror, and there, not far from the roadside, stood a single column, broken at the top. Okay. Let me do that again. The company now went down the road from the gates. It was rough and broken, fading to a winding track between heather and whin that thrust amid the cracking stones. But still it could be seen that once long ago a great paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands to the dwarf kingdom. In places there were ruined works of stone beside the path, and mounds of green topped with slender birches, or fir trees sighing in the wind. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward of Mirror, and there, not far from the roadside, stood a single column broken at the top. Oh, so Westcott, that's the pun of the day. Balin, live by the sword, die by the sword. Oh, I love that. Absolutely love it. Anyway, notice what happens with the description. Again, the experience. The experience of the company. In our first two paragraphs of description, we were looking around, then we were looking right in front of them, but they're still looking into the far distance or the middle distance, right? Now they're descending down into the dale, and now we're looking at the landscape right around them. What is the terrain like? And again, what is Tolkien doing here? Just telling us about the terrain? Again, I don't mean to harsh on people who don't get the landscape descriptions. Some people are impatient, and it's sad for them. But is he just like, are we just getting random descriptions of trees, as some people say? No. Look what he's giving us. What is he giving us? When the hobbits turn their eyes not just to the things in the distance, but to the things around them, what do we see? There's a road from the gates, and it's rough and broken, and it fades. It's fading. It's fading. Present progressive. It's happening. It's an ongoing process, fading to a winding track between heather and whin. That thrust amid the cracking stones. So there was a great road, but the road has faded. There's cracking stones, presumably like paving stones. But the track that's thrusting amid the cracking stones, I think it's the heather and whin that are thrusting amid the cracking stones too. By the way, how many of you know what whin is? Because I'm not sure I do. This is one of those words. When I was reading it, I was saying to myself, you know, I think we've all had this experience many times during exploring the Lord of the Rings. I'm like, has that word always been there? Has that always said that? And I've just never noticed it? Because I've literally never noticed that word before. Whin? Heather and whin? Yeah, so several of you looked it up yourselves, which is great. It's like, yes, she's a talking horse. I was trying not to think that myself, Rachel. Agreed. Whin, it's like gorse. It's a prickly shrub. Of course, by the way, being an American, I had no idea as a child what heather was either. I mean, I had a vaguish sort of idea, because even as a child, I'd read enough British literature to know, like, vaguely what heather was. But yeah, I'd never seen it when I was a kid. But anyway, sorry, thinking about gorse bushes is now making me think of Winnie the Pooh inescapably, and the delightful play between the gorse bush and the ambush, when Pooh and the rest of them are on their expedition. But anyway, I'm not going to get off on that tangent. Anyhow, so we have these hardy, sort of rough, but beautiful foliage forcing its way through the cracking stones of what used to be the road. So we're getting two things. We're getting evidence of what used to be there, contrasted with what is there now. There's a winding track between heather and whin. But the heather and whin itself is thrusting amid the cracking stones. But still it could be seen that once long ago, a great paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands to the dwarf kingdom. So there's enough that they can still tell, they can still imagine what this used to look like. This used to be a highway, a paved highway, a broad paved highway. And look, in places, there are ruined works of stone beside the path. So you can tell where stuff used to be built here. And there are mounds of green, which are probably covering over something. And those mounds of green are topped with slender birches or fir trees sighing in the wind. What does that tell you, by the way? That there are mounds of green topped with slender birches or fir trees sighing in the wind. New growth, Fencing Frog. That's what it tells me, too. These are recent mounds. Yes. Yes. These are recent mounds with new growth trees on them. Recent-ish. Not like the last couple years. But within like a generation. Absolutely. Yes, Aspen. Huge contrast to the gate they went into Moria in, where they could see the row of ancient holly trees killed by the lake, and the last two standing, which get ripped down. Yeah. Yeah, the mound definitely means artificial or artificial looking. Maybe they're barrows. Maybe it's something else. But yes, when you see a mound like that, you're like, so that's a construction of some sort. So once again, we're seeing the landscape. But from when they first start going down the road from the gates, they're not just seeing the things around them, they're interpreting them and prompting us to interpret them. They're surrounded by the remnants of the glory of the ancient dwarf kingdom, and which is both grand, but also sad. And these mounds of green, I'm not sure what they are, but something happened here. Remember, he's not written about the Battle of Azanulbizar yet. But I would not be the least surprised if, looking back at this passage and thinking about those mounds of green that he described, led him to the you'll remember in Appendix A, after the Battle of Azanulbizar, the dwarves can't bury all of their dead because they won't bury them in the ground, will only bury them in stone, and they don't have time to make stone tombs for so many. And so they burn them, presumably in large, like huge fires, which then presumably after the fires go out are then covered over. I I suspect that story that he hasn't written yet was influenced by this paragraph of description. It's possible that Tolkien knows when he writes this paragraph that he has something in mind for what the Mounds of Green are, but it's not obvious to me that he does. I think it's entirely possible that when Tolkien is writing this paragraph, he has no idea what the Mounds of Green are exactly. And then he discovers later on what they probably are. Almeria birch trees. The significance of different kinds of trees in Tolkien is a really fascinating topic, he says suggestively. Almeria, what I think of, whenever I think of birch trees in Tolkien, I can't not think of the Dark Satanic. That's right. The birch growing by the lake in Smith of Wootton Major. That's the birch I always think of. Yes, there was the oak and the birch as the symbols of the studies of literature and language. There's a bunch of different significances that it has. And he, therefore, identified with the birch, the language side of the lit and lang divide. Silmarillion, that is interesting. Funnily enough, the Sindarin word for birch is whin. There you are. Right? I forgot about that one, Eric, that he composed a poem in Gothic about a birch tree, Blag me Bloma, in Songs for the Philologist. So, yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot that's interesting about birches in Tolkien. But again, to me, my first thought was, again, clearly new growth. Something happened here, and it wasn't hundreds of years ago. It hasn't grown into a forest of tall birches. These are just slender birches that top the mountains. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward is a really fun phrase. I saw people commenting on that before. Eastward bend led them hard by the sward. Now, one should resist the temptation to read that sentence like a pirate. It's important. But let me just say, I understand the temptation. Too late, says A.D. Purnell. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward of Miramir, and there, not far from the roadside, stood a single column, broken at the top. Once again, a single column broken at the top. Something is there. And that's ancient. Unlike the Mounds of Green and the slender birches, the column is ancient. Broken off near the top. And this is where Gimli stops. Tourism moment. He can't help it now. Right. We don't know. Before Gimli speaks his piece, we don't have any reason to distinguish that single column from the other ruined works of stone beside the path. The word single is the only thing that singles it out, as it were. But we're about to get the explanation, right? And it's going to be the greatest example of that, like, sign of ancient things that still survives here in the Dale. Anyway, okay. We will stop there. Our reckless, headlong pace through many paragraphs. We'll begin next time by reading this first paragraph again. So if there might be some things that we noticed then that we didn't notice this first time, but just I'm picking up the pace. At this rate, we're going to get through the end of the book in only 50 more years instead of 65. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's field trip time. Let's hope we don't have technical difficulties before field trip time this time. But all right. Thank you, folks who can only stay for book discussion. And I think we should look around the Dimrill Dale. Okay, I'm having a different sort of problem.
No different problems.
It's a different problem. Okay, this is a problem as I've never. This is a unique problem.
Oh, what's going on?
Well, I'm not able to. I'm like furiously clicking, and I can't get. Hang on, I'll come in and out again. I'm gonna have to do that anyway. Hang on. Weird.
Is this a Mac issue? Client
Yeah,
issue?
no, this is definitely a something bizarre happening on my computer thing. So I use Windows Parallels, of course, to run the game off of Windows within my Mac. And it's like not letting me go back into the Windows window. Like I can't interact with it at all. I'm even trying to just like force quit it, and it's not letting me do that.
You're having all kinds of fun.
I sure am. Okay. That was some manner of progress. Weird. Okay. I'm going out and back in again, which, as I said, I'd have to do anyway. Okay. Emma Thorne, I'm just in the middle of turning it off and back on again. But I think we're okay now. We're making distinct progress in the turning it off and back on again process. Okay. How are you this evening, Druid's Fire?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I'm just taking care of a kitty recovering from surgery.
Yes. The post-op kitten is doing all right?
Yeah, I think she overdid it yesterday, so she's taking it way easy today, and I'm letting her get away with it.
That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yep, gotta let her rest.
Arna says, if you've tried turning it off and back on again, the next step is, have you tried thinking about throwing it down the stairs? I was. I did. I think I skipped straight to that step, which was a mistake.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was taking a computer-aided drawing class, and at one point I was very frustrated with my project, so I spent some time figuring out not only the problem I was working on in Fortran for some reason, but also the exact velocity that the computer I was using would be doing when it hit the ground out of the second floor window of the Hammond building at Penn State University.
There you go. That's right. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're good. All is well. I have
Get you
overcome.
invited.
I've overcome the difficulties this time. Last time, I was prevented by events beyond my control. Now this time, so let's go back to the Nandohirian and look around. Now that we spent the whole day today on description of Nandohirian, we should look around it. So
Have you guys set your milestone out there yet?
no, I didn't. I left it inside because we're gonna mostly go back there and go back up to the silver team loads. But, that's okay. I'm gonna go. So I'm headed to the rotting cellar, and from there we should be able to get outwards
Oh yeah.
in some kind of way. So let's see. From here, let's see what our stable master. I did get the stable master outside the gates. So if we go to how about Dolven View from here?
Yeah, well, you generally go Dolben View, and then you can go to the first hall from there.
Okay. Yeah, so Rotting Cellar, I'm at Rotting Cellar. I'm going to go back to Dolven View. And from here, I know we get to the 21st hall from here, but we can go straight to the first hall from here?
Should be able to.
Okay, so let's see. Let's see.
Or the 21st hall, sorry.
Okay, 21st hall. We'll go to 21st hall is the big hub
Indeed so.
in Moria.
We'll have to suggest, hey, scenario, make this one a travel route as well.
Yeah. Okay, hang on. Which, is it this stable master? Yes. Okay, what do we got here? First hall. What's the name of the place out there that we went?
Outside the Dimrill Dale.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll go to the first hall so we can just go out the gates organically.
Well,
again.
you can't go out there from here.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So, very conveniently from Rotting Cellar to Dolven View to 21st Hall and then back to the first hall.
Out.
And we're right by the gates here anyway, so yeah, that's fine. All right. Hey, Almarea, I like your outfit. Is that a like a Corsair outfit? Love the little pointy-toed boots. It's pretty snazzy. Looks
You have a couple of Corsair outfits floating around as well.
yeah. Ah, Mechem Bizru. Okay, so we're gonna head. But it's okay. We don't have to. Let's just walk down the stairs. Okay, or ride down the stairs. Okay, so first of all, let's see what we can see. So they weren't. We can see Keletzarim from up by the gates, but we can't see the northern end of it. We can just see it down below them. But they went down to the steps. So let's see. Where the... Well, it's hard because of the scale.
The scale is always going to be different.
I mean, we can see the things that they saw, but we can't see everything from the place where they could see it because everything is kind of all closer in. Like by the time we get down, out of bowshot from the walls where they were crying, which would have been somewhere at the base of the stairs there, we can't see all the things that they saw. But if we come out around here, so let's do it in the order in which they saw it. There's the Dimrill stair and the white lace. And so from here we can see the mountains. That's Karathras with the reddish stone, right? Right up behind.
It should be, yeah.
It should be, because that's where the path would come, over, by Karathras, right? So there's the Red Horn, Karathras, with the Dimrill Stair then below it. We can't see the other mountains from here because they're like too close. But you can just see the top of Celebdil up there. Right, and that's the path. You can see here the path. That's the pathway that leads up to the Dimrill Stair and the Passover. So like that's what Aragorn would have been pointing to, right? That's where they would have come. Down along this.
Had fortune been otherwise.
Had fortune been kinder. Yep. You can see, by the way, like even how they've put the pine woods up by the northern end of the lake. We can't see the like spear thrust shape of it. And you can see they've made it a little windier, less totally teardrop shaped, but they do have it tapering a bit up towards the north by the Dimrill Stair. On the map you can see it. You can't see it so well here in person. Notice that they have, even from a distance, you can see the disparity between how deep blue the Mirror is and the sky.
Yeah, it's fortunate that we're here during the day, so we can take a look at that.
Oh yes, you're right. We can. JJ is pointing out that we can. So let's hang out. Let's all look towards Mirror. Or sorry, look towards Karathras. I can't actually select Karathras, unfortunately. But I'm going to select Karathras and then do emoji shake fist. There we go. I just shook my fist at Karathras, just like Gimli. And by the way, like I wonder how influential that passage was in leading Lotro to put a shake fist emoji in the game.
That would be a very good question to ask one of the developers sometime.
Yeah, I bet you it influenced it.
I would not be surprised.
If we look to the south again, we can't look down. You can see so I'm looking straight south now, and you can see how there's like the line of mountains in front of us. That would be the outthrust arm from the mountains.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes, like where on the map where the word Nanduhirion is like where the mountains thrust out, the arm of the mountains thrust out to the east. And that, of course, straight in front of us is the single pillar that is Durin's stone. We'll get there. But now let's go back to the path. So, of course, like I will admit, when I was reading the description that he gave of like how you can tell that a road used to be there, and there are like, ruins of stone along the road on either side. I was listening to that, I was listening to myself read the description, and I was just like, that sounds like everywhere in Lotro.
Yeah, pretty much.
Lotro's done such a good job of capturing their landscape, does a wonderful job of sort of signifying in the same way that Tolkien was signifying, in that like as I was saying, it's not a description that merely just dwells on what you see, but means something, right? Helps you process that you are in a place that used to look much different, and that invites you to imagine what it used to look like. And that, of course, is the thing that we love doing on these field trips, is imagining what they look like. So like every boulder here, like you look around here and you're like, on the one hand, you're like, okay, this over here, clearly a ruin. You can see that used to be like the plinth of something. Was there a pillar on this? But then you look at the one over on the other side of the path, and that doesn't look as obviously. It's like that could just be a boulder, but it's probably not, right? If we look around the back side of it, aha, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So even though even though mostly it looks like a boulder, you know it's not. So this was probably an archway, right?
It could have been.
Yeah, and here's like a piece probably of like the middle of the arch still sitting there.
One thing I find fascinating is the difference of time, because you've played through the Battle of Azanulbizar,
Yes.
the flashback,
Yes.
and we know how recent that was. To see how ruinous this is actually really striking.
Yes.
Like how little of what was there before still exists.
Yeah, it's really fun to see when you get to go to places where they do that kind of staging, right? Where they show you a place that you're familiar with in ruin, in like ruinous form, but then you see it in an earlier stage. Notice what we have right here to our east. It's a mound with birches on top and fir trees.
Yep, very different.
So you can see how carefully they have read the descriptions.
Yes. I've actually seen Chris Pearson's desk in the office when they still had one. That man is scary with the depth of his research. He's done scholarly papers at Oxenmoot about how he's created some stuff that you're not allowed to know about because you haven't been there yet.
Yep. No, it's really, really fun stuff. And it is such a wonderful, he is such a wonderful example of, and of course just doing Lothar was such a wonderful opportunity. Like, Tolkien gives all of these details, but they do more, and they have to do more than just render what Tolkien described. But they are generally very good at rendering what Tolkien described.
Oh, yeah.
And so like almost everything from that last paragraph we just read is like right here in this stretch that we just, from the fir trees to the birches to the mounds. And
standing in the heather.
Yeah, and notice you can see stretching out here in the southeast, right along the road. Are these natural hills? Is this a row of mounds that were constructed? Some of them look a little suspicious, right? Like they're not just natural changes in the terrain. Like this one right here looks suspiciously evenly mounded.
Yep. It's artificial.
Yeah. Now, of course, we have orcs camping here, so we have much more recent activity going on here. But again, the different stages that Tolkien invites us to imagine, from the ancient road and the ruins of the ancient stonecraft, all the way down to like these mounds, which might have been made more recently. Ooh, this is an even better view of the Dimrill Stair. It's really nice up in that direction. And Carathras sitting smugly up above it. Sorry.
Bless you.
Yeah, very cool. And there, of course, is Durin Stone, and where Gimli is going to look into the Mirror. And as I recall, it was right up and around here. In fact, it was all around, like this mound that we're standing on here is in the game where the dwarves were in fact burned after the Battle of Azanulbizar. Yes.
This is the same area. One of the interesting things that they get to do is they can reuse landscapes like this, and they can dress them differently.
Yes.
And in fact, I believe Scenario was the one who himself, if you look across the Mirror up the hill, up to the mountains, you can see structures on those mountains that didn't used to be there.
Yes.
When he did a little bit of an overhaul to prep for the Battle of Azanulbizar.
He put those ruins up there because those fortresses are in the battle sequence.
Yep, and you can see the ones on Silvertine as well.
Right, yeah, the ones up at the top. That's how I was able to tell that it was Silvertine. I can't see it well from here, but...
Yep, they are indeed there.
Oh, yeah, wait.
The orcs are having a bad day.
One angle where I could just see it.
I'm still fascinated by the 7 stars over the crown above the door. That's one of my favorite features.
Yes. Yeah, on the face of the wall above the gate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
One might argue the dwarves do stars better than the Gondorians or the Feanorians.
Well, they do different ones. 4 pointed instead of 8 or 7 pointed. Right. So this, of course, is Durin Stone. And we've got Kirith here at the base.
Can you read it?
Let's see.
Make Chad proud.
Huh. Well, one thing that I notice. So, the first thing that I'm looking at is the G rune.
Yeah, that's the obvious.
It is obvious, but it's strange. Because as I learned from Jad, that's not how they did G in the mode of Erebor.
It's true.
But I think that this means that they did these runes in the mode in Old Moria mode, which of course makes perfect sense. So that's cool. Let's see. Oh, I don't remember well enough. That's an L. Like individual letters are coming back to me. I know that one's an L. Wait, I think, yeah, the line with the diagonal cross. The one that's an arrow pointing up. Oh, what is that one again? I need my chart to look it up. But I bet you, knowing Chris Pearson, I bet you this is actually Kuzdul, however. And not merely the Kirith transliterating English, as Tolkien so often does in the book.
Interesting. I was like looking at each of the panels, and they don't all say the same thing.
Oh, I didn't even notice that the other ones had Kirith on them too. They're very worn.
Man, they're going to be super sneaky on what this actually says. The fact that they just didn't copy and paste a single phrase or something, this actually says something.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sure
it does. And as I said, I think... Oh, yeah, I can't see. I can't make out this panel at all. I can just see that there's writing on it. If there weren't writing on the other ones, I would never have even noticed that one.
Mm-hmm. So that might be a hardcore assignment, is to try to get readable, legible copies of all the panels and see what it actually says.
Right.
I'm giving you homework.
Oof.
Something to do on the plane ride to Textmoot.
Oh, yeah. I got nothing else to do on the plane ride to Textmoot. Oh, these ones are pretty clear. Hang on, let me get up on the platform. Well, clear-ish. Clearer than some of the other ones. Yeah, they're hard to make out. I bet they did. I feel sure that they first made up an inscription in Kuzdul and then put it in.
I would not put it past them in the slightest.
In Moria mode, not Erebor mode. As
And this would have been done in like 2007, because this came out in 2008.
Right. Yep. Sorry, I thought you were saying like 2007 of the Third Age, and I was like, why would they have carved it in
It kind of
2007?
feels like
Right.
the Third Age.
Oh, hey, look,
Hey.
are you saying, Amathorn, you can see golden light coming from the south? Yeah,
We can't.
we can just see the golden wood down at the southern end. Now, notice we didn't get a description of that in the text. Again, distances are shorter in the game, so that's a scale issue.
Right, they just described the light. They didn't say what was generating the light. They didn't
Exactly.
necessarily describe the trees being the source.
It was just a foreshadowing, the forelightening of Lorien, not the actual site of Lorien. Yeah, now they have made this Durin's stone. They kind of literalized Durin's stone, right? It's called a single column, and it's called Durin's stone, and they actually like put Durin's face on it, like they made it into part column, part like statue of Durin. There we go. There's his very long beard. You can see him best if you like swim out a ways and look back from the mirror. But
I'm actually a little disappointed they added the cool new water tech to the mirror to make it not so mirror.
so not so mirrory, but more
Yeah.
more
yeah.
ripply
it
and
used to
watery.
be more like a pane of glass.
Yeah.
But when they did the Corsairs of Umbar expansion, they added some really cool water tech to the game,
Right.
and it applies here too.
Right. But yes, you can
What
see
are those
this.
things on his shoulders?
Hmm.
What are those? Are those like shoulder pads or something on Durin on
I
either
think
side of his
so.
beard?
Hang on, before I jump.
Otherwise, Durin is doing Kilroy over here.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. When what I'm noticing is that notice that the mountains show up in the reflection in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
But
not supposed to.
the stars are over top of them.
They are.
So you see the whole field of stars reflected in the water. But you still do see the reflection of the mountain. You don't see the reflection of the sky. Like it's an overcast day today. If it were a blue sky with puffy clouds, you wouldn't see the blue sky and puffy clouds in there. But you do see the mountains.
Mm-hmm. And I can also see the sun.
Right. That also makes sense. Making the mirror the only place you can see the sun and the stars in the sky at the same place at the same time.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, there we go. I think those are his royal like sideburns. It's possible that the things that come down are his are clothing.
Bullets.
But I mean, we don't even get his body. He doesn't have limbs. It's just Durin's head. He has a head, facial hair, and a crown. That's all he's got on this statue. So I don't think he has shoulders or arms. So I think those are still designed to be beard. So I think what you have is you have his mustache and sideburns along his face.
Obviously.
And then you've got I think what the round things that stick out are like where his tremendous beard is gathered together and then braided.
Okay, so
It's like the bulging sides of the beard on either side of the braid.
Braided it. He French braided his beard.
Yeah, he totally French braided his beard. Yeah.
All right.
I think that's more or less what we're seeing here. And then, so yes, we have It's just his long beard, his head and his long beard. It's not there is no body on this sculpture. So yes, I think every single bit below the lips is facial hair.
Okay.
So yes, that we do see Emma Thorne, we do see ruinous structures both to the east, sort of above on that plateau above the gates there. And then over on the other bank, we were talking about those other ruins up there. And it makes sense from a military standpoint that the dwarves would construct strong points from which they could command the entire valley leading up to the gates. And that seems to be what they're doing there.
Mm-hmm.
Preventing an army from being able to come on either side of the mere, being able to approach the gates from any direction.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if we can get up onto them
I'm looking to see.
from here.
I don't think we can anymore.
But it's anyway, it's getting late, and we shouldn't.
It is very
we
late.
probably shouldn't try right now. Next time. So now that we've looked around the Nanduhiran a little bit, further down from here, we're going to end up, going towards. We're going to end up going towards towards Lorien, and we'll get there when we do Lorien. But until we depart for Lorien, I think we're going to stay up here.
Ooh, the bridge is still in.
So next time we will go back into Moria until we cross the Dimrill Dale and get up into the Flet. Then we'll go visit the Flet. But in the meantime, we'll go to where was it we were going to go to? We were going to go to oh, interesting. You can't go here into. Oh, okay, yes, you can. All right. We were going to go into the Silvertine Lodes, right?
Yes. Down from the Dolven View into the Silvertine Lodes.
Yes.
Or up from the Rotting Cellar.
Yeah, I think so next time we'll go to the Rotting Cellar again, and then go up into the Silvertine Lodes from there. And so that's what we will explore while the company is on their way across the Dimrill Dale. And since there's a poem involved, we might be able to go all the way from there. What was the sequence we're going to do next? Silvertine Lodes, then Redhorn Lodes, then Foundations of Stone?
Yeah, basically going clockwise.
Right. Okay. So yeah, we only have those 3 areas left in Moria. We've explored everywhere else.
Yep.
Okay.
And we can climb up the hills. I'm actually riding up the hill.
Okay.
To the north.
Well, maybe we'll look around a bit on our way to Lorien then, when we head out.
There's some dwarf ruins and stuff.
Cool. All right. But in the meantime, I should let everybody go as it's getting late. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I should be back next week, assuming nothing goes awry in Texas. I should be back next week in plenty of time. So
don't jinx yourself.
See you guys next week. Bye now, everybody.
Bye.